In a small town called Twilight Forest, every year they celebrated Halloween with extraordinary pomp. The streets were decorated with creepy decorations, from brightly painted pumpkins to tall dolls portraying scary witches and ghosts. But behind this seemingly peaceful facade lay an ancient legend about a mysterious being that awoke on Halloween night. According to the legends, on October 31st in Twilight Forest, the shadow roamed a spirit that took the souls of those who mocked the fears of others or dared to tarnish the sanctity of the day. Every year, as Halloween approached, someone disappeared, and no one could explain their absence. It was said that the shadow left with proud smiles, and its laughter echoed in the silence. Edward, along with his best friends, Laura and Sam, decided that this Halloween would be special. They were filled with enthusiasm and wanted to celebrate their last year in school by organizing the scariest and most exciting quest based on the ancient legend. A couple of tons of themed props and special costumes were gathered to their group's joy, but none of them realized what it would lead to. As they began their quest, they decided that the best place to start would be in the forest, where, according to rumors, there was an old abandoned hut inhabited by an ancestor of the shadow. With childlike jokes about ghosts and monsters, they ventured into the woods armed with flashlights. The darkness thickened, and with every step, it grew colder. Laura, walking next to Edward, noticed how strange shadows moved behind them. She smirked, but a sense of unease crept inside her. "Hey, don't try to scare me. We're here for fun," she shouted, desperately trying to appear brave. Sam, laughing, waved his flashlight, lighting their way, and soon they arrived at the hut. It looked ancient, with darkened windows and plants creeping up its walls. It was time to start the adventure. Upon entering, they discovered that the hut looked much older than they had imagined. The walls were coated in cobwebs, and the floor creaked ominously under their every movement. The group split up, each exploring their own rooms. Sam found an old book on the table that had clearly not been touched for many years. The title was eerily familiar, The Awakening of the Shadow. He began to read aloud, and the words seemed to conjure something sinister. Suddenly, a whistling sound filled the room, so high and piercing that the kids froze. Then it whistled again, as if someone was breathing right next to them. Edward and Laura rushed to him. "What have you done?" Sam whispered Laura, her face paling. Sam, realizing the situation might be grave, quickly closed the book. At that moment, outside, the sounds of children trick-or-treating echoed, a chilling contrast to the anxiety building within them. "This is just a game. This is just Halloween night," Edward tried to reassure himself, but his voice trembled. And suddenly, the light from their flashlights began to flicker, and the air grew icy. Outside, heavy footsteps reverberated, and the last beams of light vanished, leaving them in complete darkness. Laura, with trembling lips, whispered, "Maybe we should leave." When they gathered to exit, they found the door locked. Sam yanked on the handle several times, but it wouldn't budge. They then noticed a window that had succumbed to the wind, showing dark silhouettes on its glass. "Maybe it's some kind of joke," Edward shouted, trying to keep calm, but his voice was losing its confidence. Just then, a terrible, mocking laughter echoed, sounding unearthly. It evoked terror and made it clear that the shadow had no intention of leaving them alone. Dark shadows began to coalesce, forming outlines. Standing around them was a tall figure with a grotesque face. It was clouded, as if made of darkness itself. Its eyes glowed like two red lanterns, shimmering in the night. "Unexpected guests, how dare you disturb my peace?" the ghostly figure intoned with something akin to disdain. The question remained, how could they escape this trap and avoid the wrath of the sinister shadow? Laura, in a wild panic, threw her flashlight on the ground. Darkness seemed to swallow them, but at the moment it shattered. A brilliant flash of light erupted, and they realized the signal was calling forth real chaos. The tale of the night had turned into horror. Now they were running through the dark corridors of the hut, finding locked doors and stairs leading to the basement. With every step, they were pursued by terror and the light of those village lawns where laughter once reigned, now shrouded in shadow. In the basement, they discovered an old pendant that seemingly belonged to someone who had lived there long ago. It was covered in dust, but when Edward touched it, it began to glow, and suddenly their flashlights flickered back to life. Their escape no longer relied on those phantoms intent on catching them. "Use that pendant," he shouted. Sam and Laura ran after him, and when they burst out of the hut, they felt the small shadowy figures trying to overtake them. Fear blocked their imagination, but the brightness of the pendant gave them hope. Finding themselves on the street, they looked back. The hut faded into the blackness, vanishing before their eyes, and the shadows dissolved deep into the forest. Only at that moment, when Halloween officially ended, did they remember the celebration, the laughter of children, joyous faces, and sweets in bags. But for Edward, Laura, and Sam, this Halloween would forever remain in their memory as the night they encountered the shadow. Ever since, no one dared to speak of the Halloween spirit in Twilight Forest. But as night fell and the wind whispered its ancient tales, sometimes a distant laughter could be heard, one that ensured fear lingered for too long.